All right, guys, come with us as we jump into a back session at Asylum. I actually really like a seal row variation. I find them to be really good mid-back contraction. You get a good stretch when you hang over the bench properly. Incline seal row, really comfy. Whew. One thing I'm really excited for is if this is the condition that we can sustain going through this health phase, pulling down supplementation load, testosterone coming down a little bit, estradiol rising a little bit, and this is the sort of harder look that we can hold. I'm so excited to start growing, supplementation going back in, cardio in, steps still up, training load going higher, food going higher. It's really starting to fill this out from the condition base that we've built. This is why I teach clients so often, you would have heard it in check-ins, is solidifying the condition you achieve. Not rushing back to fat gain, not rushing back to weight gain, but trying to get to a point you can stabilize, let the body get healthy, lock in there. You'll find so much benefit from it. And just giving yourself like a really good platform to escalate and grow from. If you start too fat, which is mistakes I've made in the past or listened to in the past, is at a certain point you just continue to acquire more fat mass without any additional muscle tissue. Now with that, you then comes the effect that you get to grow less, but you have to cut sooner, tighten up faster, and you spend less time being able to build new tissue. The accumulation phase, this is bodybuilding, the accumulation phase should be more towards building tissue than it is cutting away. So if you spend more time having to cut because you just get fat, well then what was the point? So big focus now is, from this position, this platform we've built, is a solid rate of growth while staying. If we can stay this level of condition while getting to say 100 kilos, I'm gonna be very, very happy. Right now, I still mentally get my head around it and like hold him not as lean as what I was on stage. But from here, man, if we get to 100 kegs at this condition, then we'll definitely know we put on true tissue for the first time in a long time. Okay, so since we're just doing like 3, maybe 4 sessions this week, I'm just gonna hit multiple variations, multiple angles of the back. So some close grip, some neutral grip, some wide grip. We'll get some row variations in there, some rear delt bicep work. So one thing with travel and looking at like a maintenance / deload phase is you don't need a high degree of set volume to maintain stimulus. You can train quite well, quite proficiently with lower to moderate volume, still achieve a high degree of stimulus and preserve tissue quite well. If it's not an optimal window of time to push high degrees of growth or high volume for recoverability and stimulus, you don't need to. It takes far less work to maintain tissue and still train with high degree of intensity than what people tend to think. And I find too the relationship between intensity and volume is that oftentimes if you take those sets quite hard and train them properly, then you don't need a lot of sets to begin with. Now obviously training is fun and it's not to overcomplicate and overanalyze training, but if you train hard, the amount of volume required to grow generally decreases. until you get to that degree where you need to then titrate up sets like in relation to that. But for the most part, most people probably get away with less volume and harder training intensity, especially when it's on things like travel and holidays. Get in, make the most of your sets, go home. You know, you're not there to spend 3-4 hours in the gym unless that's where your business is, your life is, your results are, you know, your client base is, your income is. Perhaps maybe it's beneficial to do so, but we've got other things going on in this trip that aren't just culminating around training. So getting in and getting the sessions done, the rest of the day, what's going on, starts to matter. So you know, we get these sessions done, go home, finish up our client work, go catch up with colleagues, people that we know, make the most of our time here. So yeah, make the most of your sets you have. You don't need to drag the sets on and add more volume just because. So yeah. Alright, so we managed to figure out how to turn the sounds off on these buttons, but finished the session, just got check-in photos done, completely forgot that it is going to be about 6 or 7 a.m. back home on a Friday, which is check-in time. So clients, yes, even around the world, we can still be accountable and check in with our coaches. Chris will have my data and feedback for pretty much as soon as he wakes up. So the only downside was photos were taken with a bit of food. I had one meal today, but yeah, just while I remembered, just make sure to get some photos taken whilst we're there for an update for Chris. But overall, I was very, very happy with the condition. Actually, as Brooklyn said, actually looked leaner this week after flying and travel than we did last week right before we left. So yeah, I'll take the win. Things are tightening up as we expected or predicted they would with the way that we approach travel. So don't be surprised if I come back leaner in 2 weeks' time than we are now. So always an interesting thing to see how the body responds to travel, jet lag, fluid retention, stress, that sort of thing. But yeah, for right now, actually look pretty decent. We just finished our back session. Going to go to the ATS facility, CJ's founding gym. Catch up with him. I'm going to go get lunch. Ooh. Yo, you on your way? Hello.
I just left Haddonfield now. Yeah. So, do you guys have like a time you need to be out of that house or no?
No. You're good. Take your time. Whenever you get here.
Okay. All right. Cool. Yeah. It's gonna be like, I don't know. I could arrive at your place at 9:17, or I could grab my stuff and arrive at your place at like 9:30. I live across the street from where you guys are, so I'll probably just grab my stuff and then pick you up, so then we have momentum.
Yeah, that's cool. That's easy. That works for us.
All right. Awesome, dude. I'll see you guys 9:30.
All right, dude. See you soon.
Later.
Oh, yeah. That can go in here. I might make some chicken and potato then. My gut's still a bit off, hey? Mm. My dude is bulking the sourdough. So me and Brooklyn, we go through one loaf. This dude's pumping out 20.
Be a long night.
Right, how about my steel one? Because I doubt we're going to 5 breasts.
Yeah. No room? I can make room for you.
Sure.
I'm throwing it out.
Sort of like I laugh when clients will say like it's hard to stay accountable on like while traveling.
It's really hard.
Right. Buy those packs of rice or packs of potatoes.
It's really not hard.
And then you just literally get like sealed salad bags or like frozen veggies.
That's it.
We might have like 2 or 3 meals of like a Five Guys or a Cheesecake Factory over here. The rest is just going to be like on plan.
Yep. That's exactly what I do usually.
Like
I'm like one of those people that come undone when I go. I just don't. I sometimes lose it.
You say you aren't someone who comes undone, or you are?
I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, when you I live my life like this for some years. Like,
it's just normal. Like, I'm not going to go to a place that has no restaurants or like has no GM shop proximity to that
as long as you're
stuff.
intentional, dude, it's like good enough.
I would sooner kill you than hurt my baby. I'm just gonna keep
that would make sense.
Yeah, I'm just gonna keep it honest with you. Yeah, she's the homie, dude. You don't you get it. You do get it. Like everyone gets it, but you don't really get it. And everyone said it to me, and I was so annoyed in the process of having a baby when they would say that shit. They're like, dude, I get it. No, I get it. Like, I have parents, I get it. And then the baby comes out, you're like, oh, I get it.
Oh.
Like, prison doesn't really sound that bad. that's the thought. And you're like, yeah, Bristow is fucking drunk, so you're gonna have to hit them up.
Drunk?
Yeah. He's like talking. There should definitely be a second bathroom in this fucking place.
Right?
Oh wait, cunts.
Oi.
You better say hello like that on the call.
Is he with all his boys?
That sounds like it.
Oh, you know who he was just with? They didn't have brunch with his parents. He was with his dad.
Nah, he put
Yeah, his dad.
He said, just tell me what street we'll meet you. And I'm like, bro, I don't know the street. I'm not familiar.
Hey, man.
So you should just call him back.
Hang on. I cannot hear you. There's that. Exit full screen.
Doesn't know how to use the internet.
Can you hear me, Rob? I can't hear you for some reason. Hang on. Microphone, speakers, headphones, that's why. Right now, can you speak now? There you go, I got you. What's going on, man?
Emily, is my sound
Oh, that's better.
to you?
Tell me some stuff. I love around.
CJ said, what's up?
Any difference? You said what's up?
CJ.
What's up, CJ?
That's my dude.
You guys Alice?
Yo, what up?
We're on the Jersey Shore.
Oh shit, what part?
What part?
Wildwood.
Wildwood.
I can see you enjoying some of America's shittiest areas.
Correct. This is the most accurate thing I've ever heard.
CJ showed us his favorite place in the world. That's why we came here.
I love
Dare
trash.
you tell me fucking Asbury Park is amazing next?
Yeah. Camden and Asbury Park.
Plan today is to talk about how stress impacts fat loss, compliance, all the other fun stuff, and we're going to talk about the distinctions between direct and indirect contributions from stress to that entire process. Because I think the messaging that we see a lot of coaches putting out there is that stress equals cortisol, and cortisol equals blocking of fat loss. And I think when you start to see that type of language or being presented in that way, people literally think like, oh my God, if I'm stressed out, I can't lose fat. But then fat loss in and of itself is stressful. And if that was the case, then every single bodybuilder who's competing for a show, or anybody that's ever been in a dire situation like a prison camp or a Holocaust situation where they were imprisoned, that means that they would never experience any type of fat loss, and that's just not the case. So is it practical to stress our clients out and induce fat loss in the hardest way possible? No. But we also have to be able to explain to them that the oversimplification of cortisol, things like insulin, are just ways to scare them into thinking that they can't achieve something without that particular coach's or person's interventions that aren't any more or better than ours are. So it'll be a good conversation. I usually, it's 8:02, fuck it, let's let it rip.
Recording in progress.
I mean, I guess you could introduce yourself. Why not? Tell us who you are. Tell us why you're an American, why you have an Australian accent.
Well, I guess the Australian accent's because I'm Australian. I know that's a crazy concept, that one. But I'm Ben Mayfield Smith. I'm the founder and owner of Matter Athletica. So we work with a range of clients from body composition, general populations, through to advanced elite athletes for bodybuilding shows, performance sports, things like that. So we deal pretty heavily in this population, and my background is actually in clinical psychology and sports nutrition. So this is where like the stress window, I think, was a very an important conversation with the way we operate and work in that space, and the way a lot of you guys will work with your clients in that space and people in that space. I think the stress conversation is very convoluted and muddy. And we end up with a lot of misunderstandings of how stress actually impacts things. We see marketing all the time with, stress, as you sort of said in the intro there, is like stress equals cortisol equals, resistance to fat loss. But what we generally find in the literature and coaching in all of our experience working with people is that stress in and of itself is not the problem or limitation with fat loss. It's the proxy or the associated behaviors that tend to cause the issues with fat loss, the coping mechanisms and the strategies we use to offset fat loss and weight loss. And that's kind of where I think the conversation is going to be really fun today.
It gets to a point where, like, I don't ever want to negate the impact that stress has on this process, and it doesn't have to just be fat loss, it can be anything. It can just be the way that people understand and cope with stress. We know from doing this job for as long as all of us have, people have stressful lives. They have very emotionally unregulated lives, and a lot of times fitness and nutrition are so low on the totem pole of importance for them that it's just not the first thing that they're going to start to try to address. Like they live in this constant state of chaos all the time because they're unprepared. They're not planning for anything. They're not proactive. Everything is very reactive. And then that same problem will start to spill into their ability to stick to anything. And the only thing that they're doing is they're just holding on to the stuff that's absolutely necessary for survival, which is obviously their job because it puts food on their table. And childcare. So self-care is just completely last place. But then they have all of these aspirations of I want to be stronger, I want to be fitter, I want to be less fat. Cool. Well, you have to also make sure that you understand that there are things you have to do as an individual to be able to create those outcomes. Without doing those things, you don't get to have those outcomes. And I know that that's not an easy message for a lot of people to receive. But if we don't tell people the truth about that aspect of this process, then they're going to keep believing that the stress itself, because they've seen it from all of these functional health fuckers, that's the thing that's stopping them from getting the result. It's like this, something inside of me chemically is so broken that I can't achieve this outcome. It's like, no, it's just preventing you from doing the shit that you know you have to do. That's it. So let's break down. Obviously, there's different types of stress. There's training stress, there's allostatic stress, all that kind of stuff. So can you just categorize it and break it down in the simplest form, so at least we have an idea of where the sources of it are coming from?
Yeah, so there's so many forms of stress, right? Like we can look at, if we categorize even to like roles in life and things that we go through, people, they consider stress as like I have a stressful job. It's like, cool, that's one part of it, one aspect of it, right? But like you said, we can have physiological stress. So there's training, there's exercise, there's activity, there's also your workload on your body, there's raising kids, there's those components of stress. All those individual domains, or I guess you call them categories in life, start to accumulate as what would be some form of either physiological or psychological stress. I think that's a big differentiator people need to understand when we work with clients, is it's not just stress as an umbrella term. There is stress, and then we have those categories that get broken down inside of it. So I like to look at it as, okay, what are the psychological components of stress, or the physiological components of stress? And then we start to look at that and go, okay, well, how is this person we're working with, how are they handling their work demands, their lifestyle demands, that they've got to be up at certain times, like sleep. Sleep can be a huge stressor. Are they getting enough sleep? Then we can look at, okay, psychologically, what's their relationship like? What's their finances like? What's their home life? What's their work life? What is their hours required to do their job? All of these things start to constitute what I would believe are called the components of stress as an umbrella term. The issue is, I think we see stress come through as like this, I'm just feeling stressed. And it's like trying to talk to someone about emotions. Someone just says like, I'm feeling mad. Okay, or like, what does that mean? How are you feeling mad? Or like, I'm feeling angry today, or whatever it might be. Okay, let's try and articulate like grown adults what that actually means. What is your emotion that you're feeling? Same thing with stress. Like if we just throw this umbrella term of stressed, okay, well, we can't fix stressed. The stress is like, there's distress, there's eustress, there's positive stress, there's bad stress. What is the actual components you were looking at and saying, okay, what kinds of stress are you experiencing? Is it, you're feeling diet fatigue stress? Are you feeling like your boss is overwhelming you with workload stress? Are you and your significant other having fights at home stress? Is the training load that you're under too high? Or then you start to look at it and say, okay, well, how many of these components interlap? How many of them are interlinked where they start to impact each other? So there's so many, I guess you would say, like variables to the stress umbrella that add up that can then be broken down to assess individually. And that's where we get into like assessing lifestyle metrics and life structure and systemization. But
the amount of domains you can break stress into, I think, A, doesn't get enough appreciation, but B, there's so many of them that contribute to the total, I guess, quote unquote, stress bucket that it needs to actually be understood by people. And that's where, I think that's the conversation really is like what are the stress components that you're experiencing? What are they actually, and where are you facing them?
Piggyback off of what he's saying is to be able to empower our clients to know that they have autonomous choice still, even under the worst possible circumstances. Yeah. Because, like, let's take the perimenopausal or menopausal woman who's now been told through several channels on Instagram that cortisol and insulin are the reason why she's fat, or she's gaining fat, or she can't lose fat. And we know that when cortisol is high, we also know that insulin is being released into the bloodstream, and that's because we're trying to liberate energy out of cells and put it into tissues to use for energy expenditure. But that's all types of stress. That's just that's the stress response. I don't care if you're getting chased by a bear, or if you had a shitty day at work with work, or a shitty day with your spouse or your kid. The body doesn't know the difference. Yes. It's going to still do that same physiological process of cortisol up, insulin pulls glucose and triglycerides out of these cells and puts it into these cells for use to then be able to fight or flee. But we're not fighting or fleeing. So then it just ends up being recirculated back into the bloodstream and then back into fat tissue or wherever else it's going to go. So just because cortisol is up and insulin is up doesn't mean that somebody mechanistically can't achieve their fat loss result. And I think where we need to start as coaches is to be able to provide evidence to our clients of that. So now they can believe that despite how hard their lives appear to be, and despite the messaging that they've received from these gurus on Instagram, that they are indeed not broken, and it is possible to achieve results. Because once they know it's possible, every other conversation you have with them after that starts to become a lot more doable, believable, and now they can, and it's, what is it, Jeb always talks about this, but like the 3 stages of, it's like autonomy, competence.
Oh, self-determination.
Yeah, self-determination theory.
Yep.
And people have to have those 3 things in place.
Relatedness, competence, and autonomy.
Yep. Okay. So let's talk about how we can have that conversation with clients, because most of my clients, and let's just use my people as an avatar because they're going to be different. The athlete has a very strong why.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously you can probably speak to the athletes that you have that have the strong why yet still don't comply. But let's just take those people out of the equation because they have an easier time to comply because they have a shorter period of time in the window. It's a very specific goal. Their why is super, super specific. So that individual inherently is a little bit easier to deal with from like having to convince them to do their shit standpoint. But Mrs. Jones, who's got 3 kids, who's 100 pounds overweight, who's never been able to string any of this stuff together, and who's constantly overwhelmed, that's the person that we're really trying to drive this point home to. So how do we get that person to believe that they can do this thing?
I think again, looking at like like you said, right, that person's overwhelmed, they're completely exhausted, and I've run all these options and nothing works, right? When someone tells me, or they're at the stage of that existential belief that nothing's possible, like I can't do anything, right? There's nothing that I'm able to do. What I try to pull back to is what's the simplest, lowest form of action that you can take that's going to produce a result. Get down to the simplest, like without even being rude, dumbest thing that you could possibly do that's going to produce a forward action. Because action is going to trump emotion and stress. One of the best ways to get momentum and get a buy-in to the result happening is some form of forward action. If we stay in that position where we're reinforcing the stress narrative or reinforcing that internal belief and language, that's where the client's going to stay. That's where they're going to believe and buy into, like, well, I'm just stressed and this can't happen and this can't happen, so what's the point in trying? Those clients become anchored and struggle to, or I guess fixed and struggle to move forward. If we can get into the simplest action, the smallest possible move and say, okay, let's pull this back. Let's reduce the overwhelm. Let's reduce the overall thing, right? Let's focus on the sphere of influence you have control over. And we can start to reduce the total perception of stress by saying, okay, we've got distress, we've got eustress, right? We've got our uncontrollable list, we've got our controllable list. Let's look at the things here that we have that we can actually move forward on. What's the simplest one that you have today that you can be? And it might be, let's start by getting a liter of water in the morning before we go to work. It might be, okay, do you have 2 to 3 serves of fruit and vegetables in your day? Can you do 2 palm portions of protein, right? of all those things, it might if you went through their whole day's list, it was like train, cardio, steps, to look after the kids, get to the gym, get to work, do these. It starts to get quite overwhelming. The stress rises. They get that cortisol spike. They do start to feel overwhelmed. The goal isn't to add to that pressure. The goal is to systemize where we can take that pressure away and put something back into their control, create that autonomy and the competence where they can then go, okay, well, I can do 1,000 steps before work. I can do, a few glasses of water and make sure I have some protein prepared. I can do, diet soda instead of full sugar soda. Okay, cool. So now you've established some form of competence. You have a bit of degree here where you've got some choices, but you have competence to do the thing. Well, now that stress load goes down because it's like, well, those aren't on my to-do list anymore because I know I can do them and I'm just going to get them done out first thing in the morning. So we've created a degree to which we've alleviated some of that stress in what we call the stress bucket, right? We're adding more and more stress to the bucket. It's going to eventually overfill and explode. Let's add a tap to that bucket. Let's drain that bucket and remove some of that stress that we're filling the bucket with. That's going to give them more confidence, going to build more belief in themselves, and that's going to give them forward action momentum. Well, now they're not as overwhelmed by this list of things they have to get done because they've just proven they can do it. So that immediately offsets some of that accumulated stress that they're feeling. Because if we really look at it, right, it's going to be there's stress that's going to be every single day that they have to go through. Raising kids, the bills coming through, finances, work life, etc. Let's take away some of the stress we can control so that they do have the psychological and emotional capacity to do the stress that's always going to be there. Now they feel way less overwhelmed. There's so much less anxiety and emotion around those actions. Getting them to move forward becomes so much more efficient and effective.
Do you ever do a schedule on it with people?
Oh yeah, I'm a big believer in that.
You will?
Yeah.
Okay, so walk me through that process because I've considered doing that several times. I've had several cases recently where people are basically just telling me hey, I can't even schedule a call with you until 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
And to me, again, I hear this, and I don't want to ever invalidate people's struggles. I never want to make them feel like they're not being seen and heard. But there's got to be an element of bullshit to that. You're telling me that in the next 2 weeks you have not 10 minutes to be able to hop on a phone call and discuss something that's seemingly important to you.
Yeah.
I have a really tough time believing that. But then it's okay, I know where my time goes. I can tell you from start to finish where I allocate my time. I've watched other people operate, and I don't know that they can do the same thing. So where does that process start, and how do you do it?
So one of the things I'll do is again assess what is tangible data. So one of the first things you can do straight away, right, is how much screen time do I have? So if I can see that and someone's in the 4 or 5 hour mark, right, of screen time per day, we're not really going to have the conversation about you not having time. It's that you're allocating poor time. So that's already an audit straight away you can do first thing in the morning. Just check your phone, how much screen time did I have yesterday? Well, how much can I improve or decrease my stress? Visual stimulus that you're taking in of negativity using the world on social media. How can I decrease that stress load? How can I free myself up? Let's look at that number and strip that back. Can I get that to 2 hours instead of 5? Same thing with food reduction, right? But let's say that's already my first point of assessment. And then what I'll do is what's most people's complaints is I don't have time in the morning to make my meals. I don't have time before bed to do X, Y, Z. So what I'll get them to do is a time audit, usually using something like the Pomodoro technique or a time blocking, a time tasking assessment app. They're literally free searches on Google. They have them as plug and play extensions. And I'll get them to time track the things that they do, what time they get home, when they're making meals, when they're getting on the couch and watching TV. Generally what I find is there is disposable hours in there where there's just not succinct behaviors, and because they've chunked things together, our ability psychologically to task swap is actually a psychological skill we can train and improve. Most people are terrible at it. There's about a 15 to 20 minute window to task swapping. So if you're going from getting home from work to then wanting to make a meal for dinner, then getting the kids ready, then getting this thing, I want to get on the couch, now I've got to get myself ready for work the next day. The ability to do all those things is so inefficient and effective that it's creating more stress in their time. So they're I actually don't have 20 minutes because of all these individual things they're swapping through. The reality is, if on that concept, there's no, how do I explain it? If we're not looking at systemizing the execution, we're going to fall behind and say we don't have time. If we start to look at it, I try to teach this concept all right, let's buy back time in the morning by preparing our night before. If we're going to do that, so what does that look like? Well, before we get on the couch, I want you to do these things. I want you to try to attack these tasks. And generally what will happen is you'll start to pair actions together. It's like habit stacking, right? We'll start to pair some behaviors together, and suddenly it's if I'm already making dinner, maybe I can also meal prep some meats and vegetables tomorrow for breakfast or to get ready for work. Well, if I'm already getting my gym clothes out, I may as well get my work clothes out. or if I'm already, getting the kids ready for bed, why don't I brush my teeth as well? So we're stacking time-efficient behaviors together. Suddenly, it might not seem like much, but if we've brought back 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, 5 minutes there, suddenly we have an extra hour up our sleeve per day. That's like, well, that's just this tiny window of time. What if we did that across our entire day? Well, now you've got maybe an extra 2 or 3 hours you didn't think was there, but you've stacked these behaviors and these systems together to create a workflow. And now it's like, oh, suddenly I found an extra hour in my time to free up to go to bed earlier, to get some meals prepared, to, I'm able to get to the gym. I can have that coaching call because you've ordered and assessed, no different to tracking your nutrition, right? Just start with Chronometer or MyFitnessPal and put the food in. Same with your time audit. Just start with time and look at assessing those things and seeing what that is. And then all of a sudden you can break down, well, how do I improve my time management by stacking these things together?
Just to also comment on, somebody has to have a level of willingness to do these things.
Yes.
Like that, the hardest part that I think any of us are going to encounter in this career is that people will verbalize all sorts of fun stuff that they want to accomplish.
Yeah.
And you'll see that in the coaching world. I mean, there's people in here that coach coaches. But what do we hear all the time? I wanna have more clients. I want to make more money. And then you're like, okay, cool. Your behavior doesn't show me any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not because you're incapable, and it's not because you don't care. It's just other things are really important, and I'm not sure that you've had enough practice in prioritizing yourself and making time for yourself for these relatively mundane yet tedious tasks. I mean, because if you really break down what fitness and nutrition compliance looks like, it's not really all that time consuming.
No.
I mean, let's say and I think this is actually a helpful exercise. When you tell somebody, hey, I need you to do 150 minutes of moderate intensity cardio per week, and I need you to get 2 full body strength training sessions a week. So let's call that 150 and 120 minutes. So that's 270 minutes. Okay. Let's call bulk ingredient prep another 2 hours per week. So that's another 120 minutes. So now we've gone from 270 to 390. And if we break that down to them in like that very simplistic way, it's like, do you have this many minutes per week to allocate to yourself, and where can you throw it in? Because I think there's also this assumption, Ben, and correct me if I'm wrong, but people have this feeling, it's like, well, I know that a workout should last an hour, so if I can't do a full workout, what's the point of doing anything?
Yeah.
And then, with meal prep, it's like, well, I'm under the assumption that I have to prepare all these meals, put them into containers, put them in the fridge, and do all of that on a Sunday afternoon, and that's all I'm eating all week long, as opposed to doing the ingredient prep system, which is you're doing that several times per week as needed as things start to deplete out of your refrigerator. Well, that becomes a lot less of a daunting task, and you can prioritize, hey, on Tuesday night, I need to replenish my protein stores, so maybe instead of going to the gym tonight, I'm actually going to go and do my meal prep tonight, because controlling my nutrition is a much bigger lever to pull from a fat loss perspective than trying to get that workout in. So I want to know from your perspective, like with your Gen Pop people, not your athletes, but like Mr. and Mrs. Jones, how long does it normally take people to get to a place where you feel as though their routine gets a little bit more consistent? Like, let's say somebody signs up with you and they're just chaos from the start.
Yeah.
They don't track their food, they don't meal prep their food, they're eating out several times per week. They're the classic overvaluer of exercise and undervaluer of eating. Like, they'll make all the time in the world to hit their 5 group fitness classes. But they won't make any time to do anything else.
Yeah.
How long do you usually see it take from that person from getting from a place of like, I'm not doing anything in a controllable fashion to I actually kind of put my shit together?
So I'll usually see that probably in the first, so I do some onboarding assessment. Usually my process will work for a week 4 check-in, like a week 4 sort of like checkpoint, week 8 checkpoint, 12, and then 6 months. Generally what I'll find is the first 4 weeks for those people, I'm not so much worrying about tracking their food, I'm not worried about macro tracking or adding more, I guess you'd call adding more stressors to the plate. Realistically, it's trying to develop an understanding of system of where they're at and starting to add the micro behaviors that'll work. So it usually inside 4 weeks, we start seeing some pretty sufficient changes in behavior, so long as that we make those behaviors fit what they can achieve and then build off that momentum, right? So it's the Goldilocks zone of skill acquisition. We don't want it to be, Vygotsky in education calls it the Goldilocks, the zone of proximal development. Don't make it so hard that they feel overwhelmed and get lost, and that decreases motivation. And don't make it so easy that they don't feel any sort of challenge or like, hey, why am I paying this person? There's no reason to be here. We've got to put that skill acquisition inside that marginal degree of difficulty where it requires them to level up and challenge themselves, but not so hard where they get overwhelmed and can't do it. So you start with like obviously assessing that client where they are. As you said, like let's say that person has 5 sessions and they're it's got to be 2 hours a day because that's what the bros used to do back in the day, and I've got to get in there and smash a 2-hour gym session, muscle group splits. Fantastic, cool. You've got the energy to do training. Okay, but you don't have the energy to sleep on time, get your hydration, get your meal prep in, and stick to nutrition. Okay, well, what about if we pull back to 3 sessions a week and we use that allocated time that you might have been 4 hours extra in the gym? Let's break that down and diverse that amongst the actions that are going to get results and move forward. Well, what do we need to do X, Y, Z to make that happen? And generally, I'll find they get more buy-in early because they realize I could have got the same results with 3 days a week instead of 5, and I've now got extra time to start moving new skills and start learning new skills. And so you get this fast-paced result in the first sort of 4 to 6 weeks because it's a new skill acquisition, which we know is pretty quick if you dedicate time to it. It's like when people get that early strength gain in the gym, we know it's neurological adaptation really taking hold. It's the same thing with behavioral modification if they get that buy-in, right? Which is why you want to reinforce the behaviors early and try and get that momentum. Positive feedback loop, they feel great about doing it, they want to do more of it, keep it going, keep that proudness, that pride coming through. So I generally find if we get that momentum happening, inside 4 to 6 weeks, people are pretty good at switching up behaviors. It's mostly removing that self-doubt they had or that limiting belief where it was like, I don't have the time to do this, I can't do it. Well, if we remove these things and put some structures in place, what I like to reinforce is systemization, you'll suddenly realize pretty quickly if you mass cook, like take one of those training sessions and make that a bulk cook time. Make that like, maybe a Sunday night or a Saturday night, you're going to do some bulk meal prep, ingredient prep. Cool. Now in the mornings, you can grab 2 or 3 of those things, put them together and make a dish to go to work. Maybe the next time is going to be like washing laundry and preparing your gym clothes so that you have your clothes are laid out, stuff is ready to go. Sweet. So you start to build those early behaviors, what I would call like foundational pillars, right? We're trying to teach the foundations of behavior change, of getting a result, of moving forward for that individual person. Realistically, for us as coaches, that's meeting the client where they are and then leveling them up. So we're not adding to the psychological stress of overwhelm, we're challenging them with a degree of reducing stress, but making it doable where they feel motivated by it. So it's still a form of stress, like we spoke about at the start of the video, right? It's still a degree of stress where we're challenging their diet, we're challenging their training, we're trying to get them to structure their life, but it's kind of like looking at it as an investment. Though it's a stress early on, we can get a return on that investment in the future where it becomes easy. Versus you just being stressed every single day because you're like, I can't meal prep, train, and go to the gym, and do my cardio, and do my step. All right, cool. Let's take away those 5 sessions to 3. Let's start with a couple of minor behaviors. And then it's like by weeks 4 to 6, 6 to 8, then we start looking at, all right, so we've got these things down pat. Let's track that food now. Now let's talk about calories. Now let's talk about getting the actual trackable system in place and seeing what you're actually eating. I like to look at it as add before subtract in the nutrition world. Let's add some systems in there like adding protein preparation, vegetable preparations, and fruits. Let's start there. Can you do that? Yes, fantastic. All right, now what's the next thing that will challenge you? And that's where we can expand that stress model where it's just stressful enough to cause adaptation, but not so stressful they feel overwhelmed. If that answers your question.
What separates the people that have figured it out versus the people who haven't is just time.
Yeah.
I honestly just believe it's just time and repetition.
Yep.
Like, I think all of us at some point felt a level of resistance towards being prepared, making certain decisions. Like you're traveling right now for work. Mm-hmm. You know that now that you're traveling, you're going to go and seek out where's the local gym, where's the grocery store, do I need to get a rental car, should I be in an Airbnb versus a hotel so I can control more of my intake.
Yep.
Like we make those decisions autonomously now without even really ever thinking about it because that's just our default.
Yep.
Whereas for most of our clients, they've been operating the complete opposite way for 15, 20, 30 years.
Yep.
And now we're asking them to completely change the way they think about all this stuff. So what I find is I like to give them immediate structure and immediate rules because now at least we can have like guardrails on either side.
Guardrails, exactly.
And then I want to see them start crashing into them a little bit.
Yep.
Like I always have like I was on Science podcast and overnight like fucking 1,000 people started following me and a bunch of people wanted phone calls, and I'm like, I'm not gonna get on phone calls with all of you people and try to like walk you through why you should work with me. I'm gonna tell you very simply, what is your goal right now? Is it fat loss? Cool. If it's fat loss, this is what fat loss is going to look like. And I think one of the biggest things that we see that's stressful to people is that results, they don't believe that they're going to get the result. The action steps that they have to take are convoluted and ambiguous. And there's no real plan in place, because if it's like, oh, you have to get a calorie deficit. Okay, cool. How deep? How long?
Yeah.
Where do I restrict? Where do I cut? What do I leave in? They hear all this messaging on Instagram with no context, so they feel like they know what they should be doing, but they don't really know what they should be doing.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that we can do as coaches almost immediately, before somebody even wants to sign up with you, is give them the fucking exact plan that they're going to be following for the next 4 to 8 weeks. Like, this is what our relationship is going to look like, soup to nuts, for the next 4 to 8 weeks. Does this seem practical and doable to you? If the answer is no, cool. Where can we dumb things down? But Mrs. Jones, if we dumb things down, I want you to mitigate your expectation of results as well. Because this is best case scenario. This is worst case scenario. Best case scenario has a much higher potential for result than worst case scenario. Doesn't mean you're not going to make progress and feel better. It just means it can't be at the same level that you initially thought it was going to be. So how do we have that conversation?
Well, I think one of my favorite quotes from James Clear is, if we want to ease stress on ourselves, remove the expectation of something that you don't want to put the work in to do. I believe it's something like that in Atomic Habits, where it's basically emphasizing the idea that if you're not willing to put in the work or the trade-offs to get that result that you want, and it might not be by choice, it might just be by sheer happenstance or life, but we have to be fair. This is where it's really important for people to get clear with their clients' goals. Is if your client comes in with this, like, I call them. There's another book, Steve Kompler, called it's The Art of Impossible, and he has what he calls uppercase I and a lowercase I impossible. Now, an uppercase I is like absolutely impossible, without being any sort of like derogatory disrespectful. I'm not going to become African American, 7 feet tall, and play basketball. That's an impossible goal for me, right? Like, I'm not going to the NBA. If I were to say, hey, I want to drop 20 pounds, I want to get into powerlifting, I want to start doing X, Y, Z. That, if I've never been to the gym before, that's an impossible goal that's actually challenging. It's achievable. I can do it. So getting clients to be clear and understanding of what their actual goal is, and then we can walk back from that and say, okay, have you ever done something like this before? No. Okay, well, a 50-pound weight drop in the next 6 months seems pretty intense if you've never been in the gym before, stuck to a diet, and you have no transferable history or skill of being able to do that. So let's deconstruct that and look at it as something more what I call checkpoints. You can have that as the big arching goal. That's fantastic. Let's work on that. But we need to break this into more tangible concepts that's going to remove that overwhelming stress that is quite exhausting and quite intimidating. Because if you tell someone, hey, in the first month, we want to look at building these behaviors that make the system achievable towards that 50-pound weight loss goal, that's a lot more manageable and less stress-inducing than, hey, I want to drop 50 pounds in 6 months. That is a very intimidating, high, intense goal that for the average person who's never been in the gym before, in their head, it sounds like a great idea, and then you start mapping out what does that look like. It's like, oh, that's a lot. But if we deconstruct that into a more stepping stone sort of pace with a few minor checkpoints, I generally find the person gets way more excited by it, because it's like, it's again inside that reach, but not close enough where it's super easy. Oh, so I've got to learn how to measure some food, cut some food, get groceries prepared, maybe go to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, and just basically go for a walk. Well, I can do that, and then generally what we find in that execution, the response, the dose-response relationship between early behavior change and weight loss or like physique change is so quick, because they haven't been doing it, right? You take the average person who's, let's just say, like morbid obesity, they're eating 10 pizzas a day. Joe Rogan used this example one time. It's a really easy example to go with. Let's just start with 7 pizzas. Already, a very simple execution like that, you created a 3 pizza deficit, and you will just instantly see weight come off. So in that same sort of behavioral sense, instead of looking at the big goal and saying, hey, 50 pounds in 3 months or 4 months, whatever they might have said, that's pretty intense. That's going to be overwhelming, stressful. It's not going to happen in the first month. We know that. So they're going to get more stressed by it, more anxious by it. They're going to sleep less. They're going to eat worse. They're going to feel worse. They're going to turn to food for comfort, and it's going to spiral things even further. Versus, hey, let's simplify this strategy. Let's pull back to what's easy and what you can actually manage and make it achievable. Suddenly we're getting positive reinforcement, more buy-in, more motivation. That might not happen in the first 3 months, but they've got the buy-in now from those early behavior checkpoints we set, that now it's like they're less concerned with the deadline at the time and more about, hey, have I become the person that's capable of achieving the 50-pound weight loss? Because then it just becomes a matter of time. It's a when, not if. And that is so much less stressful, or like the margin of stress for that is so much less than just going 50 pounds, 3 months, holy shit. But, you know, we talk about weight on a scale, and it's like people get caught up in that emotionality of it. I've got to hit this exact number. This is a whole other conversation we could break down, but it ends up being like the emotionality behind their goals. Instead of just letting that surface level goal being the thing that's driving their emotion, their stress, we go, okay, what does 50 pounds mean to you? Oh, well, that's more about, you know, what I used to weigh in high school when I wore my prom dress, and this is where I felt the most comfortable and sexual with myself, and I felt, you know, sexy and confident. My husband looked at me better, or something like that, or my wife looked at me better. Okay, so it's not the 50 pounds, it's the confidence in yourself to look a certain way. Let's switch that up, because again, we're reducing the expectation of stress then. It's not actually the number on the scale, but you're going to get stressed by looking at that scale if it doesn't move. So simplifying and quantifying those strategies to the checkpoint, I think, is way easier than, you know, just stick with a 50-pound target. Oh, why isn't this happening? That's so much more overwhelming in every client that I've experienced.
I also do like the fact that you brought up the concept of it's not the number that you're chasing, it's the actual look and feel.
It's an unnecessary stress.
Exactly, because A, you can't control it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the biggest thing is what we have to be able to express to our clients is you may want to lose that 50 pounds and you may truly believe that at 50 pounds lighter, you're going to look this certain way. I promise you, you have no idea what you're going to look like 50 pounds lighter because you didn't have 3 kids when you were 23. You didn't have this high stress job. You didn't have this household to take care of. So a lot of things have changed over time. You may have had more athletic endeavors going on back then. You may have had more muscle mass than you have now. So whatever you believe is to be true, we can certainly keep that belief filed in the back of your head, but let's just watch you actually go through this process. And what I always tell people now, especially because I've simplified everything down to the bare minimum, I just tell people, like, I don't know what's gonna fucking happen until I see you do the work.
Yeah.
Or not do the work. Like, I have to watch you be able to be given a plan, and then we have to see where the breakdown is. Like, I don't know. Like, until we start driving down the road, I don't know what you're good at. I don't know if you suck at braking. I don't know if you suck at being able to control your speed. I don't know if you can't pay attention to the road. Like, I don't know where your deficits are at all until I actually start watching you do the stuff. And that tends to be a little ambiguous, but where our job is as coaches is to continuously reinforce that message of, hey, this is a day-to-day, week-to-week process. And nothing is set in stone, because if something isn't making sense or isn't doable for you, it is absolutely customizable. But here's the caveat, and this is where I think we lose our ability to captivate people. They have to be bought into the idea that if they downgrade their ability to show up or their compliance, they also have to downgrade their expectations.
Or increase the time horizon.
Or increase the time horizon. What I'm really good at as a coach, and what I don't see a lot of other coaches doing, is I'm having that conversation weekly.
Yeah.
Whether it be through email, whether it be through my weekly Zoom calls with my clients, I'm consistently reinforcing the concept to them that, like, summer's a perfect example. A lot of people still have fat loss goals in the summer, but now they're traveling every fucking weekend, they're eating out more frequently, they're training less. So I'm always reinforcing to them the idea that, like, is this really a good time for you to be focused on fat loss?
Yeah.
And even on my check-in form, it says distinctly, what is your focus this week? And they have 3 options. It's fat loss, muscle gain and performance enhancement, or weight management and habit management.
Mm-hmm.
I want most people to be in that 3rd category when I know that they can't get their shit together.
Yep.
If you're telling me fat loss, but then I see an empty food log and I see no fucking training sessions, I'm going to tell you that next week you better change your answer to weight management.
Yeah.
Because that's the best you'll be able to do. But a lot of coaches are afraid of having that conversation because they think they may lose somebody. My argument is that if you have that conversation, you're building trust and rapport, and you're increasing the shelf life of that client.
The other part too is, like, we're talking about stress, right? Impacting things. Let's say the client is in this seasonal window where they believe fat loss is possible. That this is a great time to lose fat, and we're gonna break down fat tissue, and we're gonna build muscle mass or retain muscle mass, and, you know, everything's gonna go perfectly. As soon as that number stalls, because in their mind this is happening and you're not getting them a result, or you're not getting them the job isn't happening, we become the bad guy in that situation because, you know, they're not getting the result they believe they're paying for. But the reality is, if we look at it, say someone's traveling during that window of time, if we haven't developed the systems and the strategies with them yet, and this is, like, you know, let's say it's early on in the relationship, maybe we haven't developed the systems, or we don't have the resources yet to give them to explain how to eat on the travel, eat on the road, you know, how to make those decisions. if the weight isn't moving, they're going to get caught up and emotional about the weight and the fat loss not happening, and they're going to get more emotional and reactive about it. It's going to exacerbate the stress response further, and it's what I call like the stress weight loss paradox, right? Is that you create this funny narrative where the more you stress about the weight loss not moving, the harder it is for the weight loss to occur, and then you reinforce this negative spiral, and then you get caught up in being like, it's not happening, it's not for me, weight loss isn't possible, I've tried every diet, these things don't work. The reality is the phase in which you attempted it wasn't optimal to try and lose weight at that time. Had we have focused on, and this is where I create this concept with my clients about building the identity of your future self, building the identity of the person who becomes capable of weight loss when the window is right. So that might be like, if you come to me in the first 2 weeks, like, I've got to get shredded. Okay, but can you stick to a deficit? Can you hit your nutrition targets? Can you do fruit, vegetables, and protein diversity? Do you get your sleep and your water intake and your supplementation protocols and get to the gym, steps, cardio? Okay, if we can't get those things right, instead of worrying about the fat loss and the weight loss that's going to exacerbate the stress response further, how about we build the person who becomes capable of fat loss when it's ready? And then when it's time to get after it, maybe you have a less travel season, maybe your work doesn't travel much during the winter and we can get focused there. Okay, maybe that's a better time for us to focus on the weight loss, but this initial window to control that stress and emotional reactivity, let's build the person who can achieve fat loss. And that, as an identity reconstruction, is so much more rewarding for them. And I find so much more, it's more reinforcing and more positive for them as an experience because they become a person who can sustain the result once they get it, which again, for us as coaches, reinforces retention. Not only do they get the result, but they know how to retain it. And then you can push the next goal after the fact. Oh, I got the 50 pounds off pretty easily, actually, once we started. Okay, cool. What's the next goal? Well, now I want to get, 10 pounds of muscle on, or now I want to do another 50 pounds, and I know that can be harder, but, I've shown that I can do it. Because then, as we said at the start of this video, right, we talked about self-determination, competence, relatedness, and autonomy. Once someone develops a history of proof, that becomes competence, then we can reinforce that with confidence. So now when they have those moments of disagreement, or they're feeling doubtful, they're feeling stressful, life is overwhelming me. Okay, well, we have a backlog here, we have a resume. A history in your life where you've proven that you can do this at some point. Let's pull back to that and go, what were you doing in those windows of time when it was working? All right, so maybe now is not the time to do that because that window isn't optimal like it was back then. Maybe we look at behavior maintenance, weight maintenance strategies. Suddenly their stress comes down. Suddenly they're less anxious. Suddenly they're sleeping better. Suddenly, ironically, in that paradoxical way, you start to get some degrees of weight loss anyway because they're less stressed about it. Everything in life is a little bit easier because they're not stressing about the weight loss. But when they focus on it, fixate on it, and it becomes like their all-consuming focus point, I tend to find sometimes those people actually struggle to lose the most weight. They struggle to get the fat loss and the weight loss continuing. But it's also the wrong time to do it in the first place, which then perpetuates it even further. So having those conversations and sort of getting them to become the person who can make weight loss possible, build that identity of self and who they actually are, have that ingrained internally that that's what they can achieve, generally builds the possibility to make fat loss possible and doable. Then when it's time to attack the fat loss phase, hey, we're in this now, we can do it. Oh, that 50 pounds was a walk in the park. Yeah, we know, because you became the person who can do it.
Well, you've shown yourself you can do it, and every time you did it, or every time you complied to the plan, you felt better.
Yep.
Like, I think one of the things that I reinforce constantly is that when you do the mundane, tedious things that we all know we have to do, there's a level of fulfillment and satisfaction that occurs that's buzzing in the background that's just kind of keeping people in a really positive state.
Yeah.
And when they're disappointing themselves by not following through, and this is why, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but most people that quit coaching right around the check-in period. Mm-hmm. Like whenever people stop payment or whenever people leave coaching, it's usually like a couple days leading into when the check-in is due. And that's because the check-in to them reveals to them their lack of compliance, which then reveals to them that either their inability to do this or the fact that this doesn't matter to them, so why should they keep paying for it? If it's truly I don't need to keep paying for this because I'm not going to follow through, you have to ask them that question. We were talking about compliance last night with my mentees, and when I asked them, or what I told them, I said is, you have two options when you start to see a person disengage. You have to ask them, is this still something that you want to do? And if not, this is where I think having price tiers and different tiers of services is important, because let's say somebody's paying you your high ticket, they're checking it weekly, and they just don't have the bandwidth for that right now. It's summertime, they just don't care as much. Instead of losing that client altogether, Why don't you present them an option that says, hey, you're paying me $500 a month, but I also have this other service that's $150 a month. You're going to get the check-in once a month, so it's less stuff for you to do. You still have accountability. You still have access to the group calls. You still have the daily text messages. You still have me in your back pocket as your consigliere of fitness and nutrition, but you just don't have to be as involved. So instead of you leaving the system completely unraveling and then gaining back the 15 pounds you lost, and then having to start from scratch again in September or October, why don't you explore this other option? That's for the person who's about to leave. Then there's the person who's now repeatedly either missed check-ins or given you Swiss cheese on check-ins. That person is the conversation you have to have as far as what is it about your life right now that's preventing you from doing these things? And would you be okay with a regression of effort? And then when you present that,
So before it gets too hot, my phone doesn't operate properly. We just finished up an Unreal call with Aram that he does weekly with his community. Just basically free education, free calls that other coaches can jump on to learn and improve. An Unreal conversation around stress management, and how we can actually decrease stress in the client by improving adherence, improving systems and structures that allow them to be more adherent, and just take away overthinking from the process. So it was a really great chat, fun to be a part of, and always, for us, great to give back and help people. I'm going to continue to try and do more of those, maybe jump on some more with Aram in the future. But continuing on from yesterday, this is probably going to be a more of like a compilation video over the last 2 days. Unfortunately, the camera did break last night. 3 days into the trip we bought it for, and it fell off the bench from a freak accident and shattered the screen. So gonna have to get that fixed, make do with what we've got, try and use it when we can. But yeah, for right now, just jump back on the phone, capture the content. We're not going to let us derail us. The intention was to get as much content on the trip as possible, and that is what we're going to do. So right now we are soaking up the Jersey shoreline and experiencing the 4th of July weekend in America, which we have never been a part of. So far it is the perfect weather. There's a heat wave coming through, but it's basically just the Gold Coast on the east coast of America. So loving it, and yeah, gonna soak it all in. Barca.
Alright, so with the belt squat, I want you to be careful. If you look back at the reps, you're kind of cannonballing into the bottom and swooping into a kind of like a pendulum squat. We don't need the belt squat to function like a pendulum. It's more of a vertical up and down, so you want to get the knee flexion for sure. You want to get the hip bend, the knee bend, but we don't want to see the knees travel that far forward like an arc function. So try to look at it more like you're squatting up and down from a seat. That should see that your knees are going to break and shift forward slightly, but we don't need them to swoop forward like you're pendulum. So just focus on vertical shifting, so up and down loading, and obviously the intensity side is great there, so the effort there is good. Just don't need you to sort of cannonball towards the bar. Try and stay towards the torso and get that maximum reflection. Something a little shiny there. This one. Is he? Oh, I didn't do the card trick. Damn it. There we go. That's the. Open it.
Nothing?
No.
Damn. Bummer.
All right.
Next one.
Pack. Last pack.
See, I'm out of.
We'll pack battle.
All right.
Oh.
You don't want to see what's in this one? Alright, get in line then.
Do you just keep these?
Nah.
Yeah.
Is it 3 in the front or 2?
Just one.
Just one?
Yep. That should be the energy, yep. That's a pretty card.
One.
3, 2,
Nothing.
yeah, you get the energies as a hit.
Yeah,
no,
I
that's-
know.
That's rough.
I feel like.
And get dropped off there. And then
What is up, YouTube? We are, well, it is America's 4th of July holiday weekend. It is awesome to be amongst such a proud culture. Something that Australia does not have and we need to have more of is the pride and respect of our history. But these guys, 250th anniversary, and it is a unreal weekend on the Jersey shoreline. But these guys, everywhere you look, there is something American. There is flags, there is celebration, there is recognition. And it's just last night they had a giant Ferris wheel that had, you know, eagles like projected on the Ferris wheel, fireworks. They had the national anthem playing. It was unreal. So yeah, it's really like our most chill phase of this trip. We'll be moving into a shit ton more work. And of course, just being around CJ. CJ loves work. CJ loves doing his thing. And so learning from that guy is always a great opportunity. I just love being in his presence, seeing what drive looks like in his passion, his field. You know, they want to change the lives of 1 million South Jerseyans, and you know, to see that in real time, how he works, how he operates, building out their facilities, all that stuff is unreal. And you know, it gives us motivation for what we want to do and the impact we want to have. So it's always a great time to be around CJ. But yeah, we are getting coffees. We're going out for a morning breakfast. One thing I love is American dining experiences. The diners are unreal. You can ask for anything and it gets made. So I got an egg omelet with vegetables and extra ham and then extra egg whites. So they will make that for you. You get that, you can ask it, it gets made. So lunches, whilst it's kind of like a grocery food desert, they call it here, is still an easy way to eat and get your groceries and your protein and vegetables in. So make it work and yeah, stay on track. All right, steps are done. We're now just heading back to the beach. I got a work block in. Got some client check-ins done, got some programming to do later on this afternoon, but it is 4th of July, so we are heading to the beach. Apparently a lot of stuff happens here on the 4th of July weekend. All the celebrations, the grills, the barbecues. So we're gonna be taking that in, getting some sun, going to the beach, and yeah, then we're gonna come back and get another work block done before we relax for the evening. So good mixture of stuff. Again, just learning from CJ, talking shop, doing some back work on me as well. And yeah, gonna go from there. Something about American sun that just looks different from Australia. Like it has like a morning taste to it.
That's good. That's a good. That's a good one.
Try not to.
Come on, big dog. Hey, man. Yo, I'm not gonna lie. The first one I missed. Next two I squared up.
Oh. Oh.
Come on,
Yay! This is so sick.
A big night.
Cheers.
All right, so as you can see, we are back in South Jersey. Spent some time on the coast, enjoyed American 4th of July. So I'm probably gonna wrap this into like one big weekend video. There's a lot of times there where we didn't really capture anything. We just didn't really like, pull the camera out. It's hard. This whole content creation thing of like what's being present with and what's actually worth capturing, what we want to see, how you spend your time. Because like we were just kind of there at the beach, relaxing, a little bit of work, relaxing, a little bit of work, relaxing. There wasn't much to see and eat per se. Like the Jersey shoreline is not a place where you do like bulk meal prep or you get a lot of nutritional options. So we kind of kept it to 2 meals a day. Starting with like the pancake place we went to for egg whites and kind of eating on the go there. The one thing I do like about America is their diners, their restaurants do things like egg white omelets. You can add vegetables, extra ham, extra lean deli meats, so you can kind of like make it on the fly. But again, it's like 4th of July weekend. The people we're celebrating with don't want us to pull out a camera and film everything. So it's kind of considering those things and put that into perspective. When it's just us, there's a lot more stuff we can capture. So we've got still a fair few things to get done here in Philly. Catch up with some people, link up some training sessions. Trying to make the most of that. And then tomorrow night, again, we're on the road heading down to DC, and I'll be spending some deep, intensive work days with Cav, digging into the matter business, where we're going, what we're doing, how we're heading, and how we continue to improve. So still plenty to get done. Really, this is the front end of the trip. There's a lot more to go that we'll be sharing and showing you guys. So stay tuned.